other expectations come from. Imagine when we're married. Imagine when we're 10 years down the road, or like the Beatles song, remember that, When I'm 64? Remember that song? Yeah. Okay, you just dated yourself, thank you very much. Along with me. But with imagination, and if the imagination goes to a dark place, it gets to be a dangerous thing. And there's a classic story of dark imagination. Now, it doesn't deal with a married person, but it deals with a problem or a principle that we all may find ourselves having a problem with. And it deals with one of David's sons, a fellow by the name of Amnon. And Amnon had an imagination that ran kind of wild. And it works like this, that David, of course, had a very large collection of wives in that day. Very many relatives. So, you know, even with a half-sister or brother, there was quite a distance. It was more like a distant cousin. So, Amnon ended up with an obsession with one of his near relatives, by our terms, a girl by the name of Tamar. He was obsessed with her. He just imagined what it would be like to be with that girl. His imagination was in high gear, even making himself sick over wanting to have this girl. So the story starts like this in 2 Samuel 13, verse 1. It says, "And it came to pass after this that Absalom, the son of David, had a fair sister whose name was Tamar, and Amnon, the son of David, loved her." Now, this Amnon he got sick over her. He just wanted her so bad. Imagine what it would be like to have that beautiful young woman. Just imagine. He just imagined the satisfaction of knowing her in every level of the way, physically and everything else. And like imagination, it got a hold, so he hatches a plot. He gets a scheme. He's going to have his young relative come over. And feigning that he's very, very sick, she comes to take care of him. And innocently, she comes to take care of him. But he has other plans, and he gets her alone, and he forces himself on her. And in all this situation, to grab that imaginary satisfaction he was looking for, he tosses away his own honor. He steals her innocence. And he carries out this deed of entrapping her and doing all of this. So, how does it turn out? How does it turn out? Just irresistible, wanting this girl from his imagination. So he does this, and then you would expect him, then he must have been satisfied with the results, because he got what he tried to get. He fulfilled his imagination. He did what he was expecting. Well, verse 15 tells us how it turned out. Then Amnon hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred wherewith he hated her was greater than the love wherewith he had loved her. And Amnon said unto her, Arise, and be gone. You know, the point that I'm going with all of this is that Amnon had a situation where he was looking for something. He had this reaction to things. He wanted this woman, thought he wanted her, threw away all his morals, all his conscience to have her. And then, when he did, he found out it wasn't what he expected. And that is always the way. When reality and conscience clash, expectations are the casualty. It's not what you expected. It's not what you expected. It ends up with disappointment. It ends up with self-loathing. It ends up with a person, because they took something that was outside of even their own bounds of morality, it causes them to hate the thing they were attracted to just as much as they once loved it. Self-loathing, guilt, all of these things come in. And it might be we're talking a sneaky trip to the cookie jar, or a sneaky trip in a love affair outside of marriage, something to that effect. Same thing happens when you violate yourself. You will hate what you're attracted to. And I would make that statement, observation of my own. I think the most unhappy people, the most miserable people, are those who are caught in an extramarital affair of some kind. because the misery is internal and it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. I don't care who they are. He might be a 60-year-old guy who snakes a 23-year-old hottie. I don't know. But in the bottom, I'll tell you, I'm not jealous because I know the misery that comes from violating your own conscience. Seduced by your imagination. Seduced by an expectation that's not realistic, doesn't happen, doesn't work. Tragedies from expectation. Kind of covered both bounds here, both sides of it. In one case, it may be this expectation in marriage that was just never fulfilled, and it's just this quiet building resentment that cripples the relationship. Or on the other hand, it may be the greener pastures, the Amnon effect. And in that looking for greener pastures, it ends up with emptiness there as well, pain and full-out betrayal. It happens from an imagination that goes in the wrong direction. That goes in the wrong direction. There are other forms. If we were to talk to counselors and ask them about other minefields to look out for, other relationship killers, other family killers that are out there, some other things fit in this category too. Mistrust, broken communication, and sexual problems that come up in the marriage itself. Without trust, what is a relationship? What is it? You know, if you cannot trust, then the imagination can really take over. Because the imagination just simply fills in blanks where it doesn't have the details, if it goes in the wrong way. Just kind of an example on that, and a simple thing is, I know every now and then Kathy will go out and forget her cell phone. You know, and she's traveling, she'll be up. And I think, well, she was going to this store and that store, should be home about such and such a time. And an hour or two goes by, she got into whatever she was interested in and was longer. Guess what my imagination does since I can't get her on the phone? Oh, she must have been in a car accident. Something terrible happened. I'm going to hear it on the news. Oh no, my wife is in a flaming ball somewhere on 36. Your imagination tends to fill in the worst, doesn't it? And for some people, maybe that's in other words. What's my spouse doing when they're out? What's going on? You know, and mistrust can really spiral the imagination. Broken communication just fits in with it. If you don't trust somebody, you don't tell them things. You kind of hold it close to the vest. And the more you don't tell them, and the more they don't tell you, then the more the imagination starts kicking in, and you have this broken communication that can grind a relationship down to nothing. And as far as the intimacy problems, well, of course, intimacy, that we don't want to be close to someone when we don't trust them or when we resent them. And it can come from either side. So it shows up there, but the imagination kicks back in because we're wired for intimacy. So that's where greener pastures may come in. Or the scourge of our age, of pornography, comes in. Imagination going somewhere it just shouldn't be going. It sounds like a funny thing of all the things we could talk of, but it's a big one. Imagination can kill families, depending what we let it. Because you know what? It's all here. It's a battle, and the battlefield is the mind. It's the mind. When the imagination goes dark, hope is killed. When the imagination goes dark, voice of reason from God is jammed. Your imagination takes over like a jamming frequency. And you're hearing these dark thoughts instead of what God's really trying to tell you. Happens all the time, all the time. Well, what can we do then? You know what? Because we're all prone. We're all human. There's all things we don't know, and our imagination's kind of filling in the blanks. How do we handle these things? How do we not go to the dark place in our imagination? Well, I just want to quickly share with you a simple two-step solution on this. Now, it's not all-inclusive, but in its own way, it is very profound, and it will take you all your life to even start mastering it. But it's a two-step thing. And in this two-step process, it starts with this. Step one, have the mind of Christ. Have the mind of Christ. I let Scripture itself give you the instruction. Ephesians 4:17. This I say, therefore, and testify in the Lord, that you should no longer walk as the rest of the Gentiles walk, in the futility of their mind. Note right there, we're talking about you're taking a direction that most of the world won't take. Having their understanding darkened and being alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the hardening of their heart. Soft heart through God is where it starts. Who being past feeling have given themselves over to lasciviousness, to work all uncleanliness with greediness, but you have not so learned Christ. If indeed you have heard him and have been taught by him, as the truth is in Jesus, that you put off concerning the former conduct the old man, that's the old you, which grows corrupt according to the deceitful lust, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. And that you put on the new man, which was created according to God in righteousness and true holiness. Therefore, putting away lying, each one speak truth with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. See, here's the point getting at. It's not a case of controlling your old mind. That's what the world would tell you. Well, control your mind. No, it's not about controlling the old mind. It's about having a new mind. When we come to Christ and Christ is in us, there is a new form of thinking that's developed that has nothing to do with the way the world deals with things. The old mind cannot think beyond its own flesh. You see it in the love relationships around you from people who have no idea who Christ is. There is a selfness to those relationships. I will love you as long as you're doing for me. I love you because you make me feel so good. I love you, but if you love me, you'll come over and have Thanksgiving dinner. And if you don't, then you're just disowned from the family. All kinds of things happen in a self-absorbed kind of love. Oh yeah, they love you as long as you're loving them. And it's feeding this type of thing. The new mind is the mind of Christ. We have, what is the new mind like? What's that love? It's like this. You're going to have communion later. And why do we have communion? Because God was so selfless, he sent his Son. And he sent his Son that he could win life for you, that he could generate life in you. It wasn't a big, I'm going to get something out of this. It was selfless. And if you put two selfless people together, how can that relationship fail? How can it fail? That is the new mind. It takes Christ to put the mind in you. It cannot exist without God in you. So, have the new mind. Step one, have the new mind. Step two is this, feed the new mind. Feed the new mind that Christ brings. Feed it. John 4:24, God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. John 8:31. Then Jesus said to those Jews who believed him, if you abide in my word, if you live in who I am, you are my disciples, indeed. And you shall, here's the effect of that, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. What nourishes the new mind? What's the dietary supplement? What is it the new mind lives on? It lives on truth. It lives on truth. It lives on truth, and truth comes from God, and truth will take your expectations and make them link up with reality. And truth will set you free. Knowing the truth. Knowing the truth. And the truth is what feeds us. So how does that work then with your spouse? How is this truth thing working in with our spouse? Well, here's the truth that relates to your spouse. I'm going to read another passage here that you're going to first say, how does that fit in? But you'll see. Philippians 4:6, be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. See, there are things that are going to go wrong in your marriage because you're married to someone imperfect. And even worse, that poor spouse of yours is married to somebody imperfect too. And there will be trouble. But if you bring the troubles, first of all, to God and make your requests be known to him, then this. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds, through Jesus Christ. Even though things may not be going well at the moment, God can give you the peace and to go and to make it through those things. Finally, brethren, and here we go. Here's some instructions for you. Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue, and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. Now that's a general spiritual principle. If you meditate only on godly things, you will have a godly mind, is the way it works. Well, how does this work in relationships? Well, here's the thing. Every one of us, if we were to sit down and describe the person we're having a relationship with, be it our wife, our grandmother, our sister, our brother, whoever, we would have two columns. And you can have the A column, all the things that is good about that person. All the good things. There are things about that person where they are true. There are things where they are pure. Things probably that are lovely, especially if it's someone you're married to. There must have been something lovely. You married them. There must be some of these things in there. Things of good report. Things that are praiseworthy. It's very few people in the world that don't have something praiseworthy. And that even being the case, I'd even go to say that even in areas where there are problems, there's the potential for them to be more of these things. So you've got all these positive things. And then there is a B list. And we all know the B list. That's all the things that really kind of get you. What are the bad things? My husband has stinky feet. He snores when he's not, you could go through and think of a lot of things that are that kind of grain of sand in your shoe and get you. And here's the thing about the human mind. You tend to concentrate on one column or the other. One column or the other. If we want relationships that work, I'm simply saying this, we concentrate on the A column. The good things in there. And above all, to look at the truth of things. Not to let our imagination run wild in one direction or another. Meditate on the good things. And meditate's stronger than just thinking, isn't it? When you meditate, it's something that's being processed in your head. Those are the things. Because whatever column that you concentrate on, you know from experience yourself, that will affect the nature of the relationship. It will affect you. Started with cowbirds at the window. By the way, they're still there. They're still showing up. Boy, those things make a mess on your porch, too. But people are like that, struggling against imaginary things. We can be, just like that. Another theological statement that I've gained as I watch the cowbirds in the window. Cowbirds don't have the mind of Christ. I feel pretty safe. I will put that out there on the internet. Cowbirds do not have the mind of Christ, from what I've observed. Bottom line, they're little bird brains. Out there, wasting time, doing things wrong. But the thing is that so are we. If we look at Scripture in another paraphrased version, we could say we're all born as bird brains. And right now, in your relationships, you're either a bird brain or a Christ mind. You're one or the other. To be a Christ mind is an act of resolve. It's a choice. Being a bird brain just comes natural. So kind of what are you in your relationships? Are you the bird brain or the Christ mind? Are you ready to be the Christ mind? Are you willing to go that step to be the Christ mind? Allowing Christ to fill you and then to feed you. Keeping the imagination in the new mind and not the old one. Because it's an amazing thing what an imagination can do in a relationship.